Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon. With me, as always, is Caleb, and we are going to be talking about trading places. But before we get to that, Caleb, have you been watching anything that is good?
Yeah, I was able to watch some stuff over the holiday weekend. Before diving into things, absolutely have to say, I know it has nothing to do with our podcast, but if you're an Ohio State fan, congratulations on having a fantastic weekend. I hope you're having a lovely day, and yeah, just living my best life over here. So
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that turkey on Thursday because that crow on Saturday was probably tough to swallow.
Oh, don't need to get into
Uh,
that, but good times. And yeah, since we have such a vast uh listenership, I'm sure that we've got plenty of Ohio State fans that are gonna stop listening to us now because
I
of that
was gonna
comment.
say we probably have a lot less of them now.
We lost our one Ohio State fan listener. Um no, but I actually did take some time to watch some stuff. Actually got back into playing games a little bit too. The only thing I'll make a comment about that is I've always just been looking for something to kind of like kill time, like brain dead, don't have to do a whole lot, like can easily pick it up for 15 minutes or an hour. And there's a game that's been out for, gosh, I think like a decade now called Stardew Valley.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
I've heard of that.
yeah, it's simple, it's nice, perfect, like just kind of helps me do something before I crash for the night. Um, but over the holiday weekend, I watched the first season of that new, well, relatively new show because there's a second season. It's called Arcane.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's
I saw that
about,
on Netflix.
yeah, it's on Netflix. It's League of Legends, based on a video game universe. You do not need to be familiar with the video game to watch the show because I'm not familiar with the video game hardly at all. I've not played it. And the
Rock.
show is really great. The few things that I will say about it is that I've wanted to get it, I don't know if it's technically an anime or just more so an animated show because anime is a specific kind of like style or genre, and I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what the parameters are. But I've wanted to get into more anime, and so if this qualifies or not, it is a great show. The one thing that I do, I've always been a sucker for just uh real movies. Like, give me real people acting in front of the camera. But one thing that I do love about anime and animated movies is the ease that they can jump um and advance through time. I think a
Hmm.
lot more easily than you can with real life movies or shows. Because they did that, like they jumped forward and do flashbacks and things like that, and it just is easier, um because you don't have to worry about an actor and actress getting too old or too young because you're just using their voices.
Hmm.
But yeah, good show. If any of that sounds interesting to you, I think that you would find it entertaining. I don't really know what else I would say on top of that to really pitch it. But yeah, I'm anticipating that probably here by the end of the year, probably around the Christmas, break time when office will be closed and everything, I'll probably be able to watch the second season. And my coworker got me into it, and he's kind of raved about the second season. So
Rock.
hopefully I'll get a chance to watch that sooner than later.
Awesome. Um, Man, for me, I watched a couple of Office Superfan shows. Saw the Dinner Party, which is a favorite. And just there wasn't really like a whole heck of a lot of extra in that one. So not really too much to talk about. I watched Christmas Vacation.
Rock.
I usually watch that multiple times. Just a favorite. We watched The Santa Claus. the Tim Allen movie. That's like my wife's favorite Christmas movie, so we checked that out again.
Yeah.
Um, I watched Terrifier 3 again, and I don't know, second time around, I don't didn't enjoy it as much as the first time. I still think it's the best of the three, but I mean, not a movie for everybody, not even a movie for all horror fans. So
Hmm.
if you're not really phased much by crazy gore and relentless gore, I don't know, relentless like mean energy, I guess, then don't watch it. But if you don't really, if you don't really care, check it out. And then I just started watching Better Call Saul because, last time I talked about how I watched Breaking Bad, the entire series in like a week.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, I better watch Better Call Saul then. And I think I'm on like episode 3, but it's pretty good. I mean, obviously it's the same universe spin-off. A lot of it takes place before Walter started cooking and everything.
Yeah.
And you get to see like characters from Breaking Bad, like Mike showed up in one episode and Tuco was in it.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's been pretty good. But other than those, I watched Trading Places again, so we should probably talk about that. Trading Places is from 1983 and is directed by John Landis. The plot is a snobbish investor and a wily street con artist find their positions reversed as part of a bet by two callous millionaires. The cast, we got Eddie Murphy as Billy Ray Valentine, Dan Aykroyd as Lewis Winthrop III, Ralph Bellamy as Randolph Duke, Don Amiche as Mortimer Duke, Denholm Elliott as Coleman, and Jamie Lee Curtis as Ophelia. This is a movie I've seen a couple times. The first time I saw it was on CED, of all things, and it actually played really well, which is very rare for that format.
Rock.
But
Yeah, I saw this for the first time like not quite a year ago, somewhere around a year ago. So
yeah, that was probably about the same as me. I watched it twice last year, so this I think was the third time I've seen it.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I wanted to do like like less traditional holiday movies, I guess, where we've already done Die Hard, which is probably the least traditional holiday movie. And then we did Lethal Weapon as well, so yeah,
Hmm.
I was like, oh, we'll go Trading Places. Um, and again, another Jamie Lee Curtis movie that we've done. We talked about it last week, how she might be the number one most recurring actor on the
Hmm.
podcast. Uh,
For
is
sure.
this is this the first Eddie Murphy movie we've done?
That would be interesting. If we had our list of actors up to date, I'd be able to tell you really quickly, but it's not. So I can't guarantee it, but I want to say it is.
Yeah, I think it is. Because I really can't think of anything else because we haven't done like Beverly Hills Cop or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or Coming to America, which I think are probably his two best movies.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Um, this movie is watching it again this time and just thinking about like now, like this movie probably wouldn't be able to be made now.
Well,
There's
it
so
could.
many things in it that are just like, oh, that didn't probably age the best.
Yeah, it could. It just would be
Neutered.
like other than yeah, neutered. Other than like the base premise uh
Yeah.
of the storyline, a lot of like the fine details and like small scenes and stuff, yeah, would definitely not fly today. So
Yeah, I mean the gay slurs and how many times the Duke brothers refer to Billy Ray as a Negro.
yeah.
Like it didn't age so well. Uh
Yep, they threw that one around a lot.
Oh yeah, and just like the blatant racism in parts of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um if this the comedy though, a lot of the comedy still works. Some pretty funny parts in it. I mean, Eddie Murphy is always funny. He's even funny now. Like I think a couple few years ago when he hosted SNL for like the first time in forever,
Hmm.
and they had that whole Thanksgiving, like family Thanksgiving skit. Did you
Okay.
see that?
I don't think I did.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. That was probably one of the funniest things that SNL's done in the last 10 years, but I mean, that's not really saying too much.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I'm kind of surprised that Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy haven't done more together.
Yeah, I thought they did really well together.
Yeah, and I mean, this was kind of the movie too that like showed that Jamie Lee Curtis has a sense of humor
Hmm.
and can handle comedy. Because if you think about it, before this, really, what did she do? She did Halloween, she did Prom Night, she did Terror Train. It was like all horror movies
Yeah.
before that, and she was starting to get like pigeonholed and typecasted and that kind of stuff.
Did she do, oh man, a fish named Wanda before or
No,
after
that was
this?
after this, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was another comedy one. Yeah, well, speaking of Jamie Lee Curtis, surprise, a little bit surprised at least from when was this? 83?
Yeah, 1983.
Well, I guess not so much in the 83. I thought I was kind of thinking it was late 70s. So, they definitely got quite liberal with the topless women throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things this movie is really known for. Just because I can't think of another movie where Jamie Lee Curtis is topless in. There might be another one. I don't know, but that's kind of what this is. A lot of it's remembered for with her in it, at least. And they're really pointless scenes.
Hmm.
Like, there's no reason for it to even happen. Uh, Especially the second time around. But I mean, we're gonna get to that. Um, it's just yeah, it's almost surprising, I guess,
Well, I
just
mean,
because I think this might be her only, partially nude scene.
well, the thing that makes it surprising then, and not like trying to make this that big of a deal, but just because we do so much around the horror genre and the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis has been throughout those movies, that this occurred in this movie, a comedy, compared to her being in a horror movie, slasher movie, where that is so common
Yeah,
that they do that with the female characters.
yeah. I mean, most of in her horror movie roles, she was always like the main character,
Yeah,
and
and
the main
usually,
character never never strips down. It seems like.
yeah, usually they try to keep the main character kind of above the others by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, she did the movie Perfect with John Travolta, and it has all those
Oh, the
aerobic
aerobics.
scenes in it, and she's
Yeah.
wearing like spandex and like zooms in on her crotch and stuff. But I don't think she did any other um nude
Provocative,
scenes.
ultra provocative. Well, she did do True Lies.
Yeah, when she dances in her underwear.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
um yeah, so kind of back to the movie as a whole. I don't know. I didn't really exactly know where to throw this in, so I guess I'm just gonna say it here now so I don't forget to include it.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm going on an old man rant, which is a little bit funny, because uh, essentially my rant is against quote unquote old people, anyways. But having just come off of doing the episode of The Graduate, recently, and where I went on a tangent and a little bit of a rant, I'm going to do it yet again. Um, where this movie, while it is a comedy and it addresses like, well, I mean, the whole premise essentially of the movie is these rich people talking about, how how do you say it, like environment over whatever,
Nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture. Thank you. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that was what I was going for. Um, and do good people do bad things because of their situations, or do bad people do good things, and the vice versa? Um, and how they're just toying with people because they can and because they have money. And I had that whole kind of tangent thing about like older people and adults and parents saying that they want better for their kids, but then as soon as that happens, they like get pissed off and then they're just like angry about it.
Yeah.
This movie made me think of it in a different aspect of where even back in the early 80s, and of course this is a theme like throughout movie film history. So this isn't anything like groundbreaking, but it really does tap into the whole concept. And I didn't really think of it the first time I watched this movie, of how disconnected rich people are and how they do not give a crap about other people.
Yeah.
Um, and it's, I don't know if they did it to just be funny or if they did it to be like, no, we're like, this is part of this is in here because this is legit. One thing that really stuck out to me was when one of the Dukes was saying, "Oh wow, we're really paying some of our employees a lot of money," and then Dan Aykroyd was like, "Yeah, well, you can't really get any lower than minimum wage."
Yeah.
And I'm just like, "Oh my gosh." Um, but the other thing is just like it did really pop into my head, and I don't know, maybe it's just like stuff going on outside of podcasts and just things you see where it's just like the dumb obsession with money and the separation of like how the 1% or the top people, how they're just like
Hmm.
completely in a different world. But part of the reason why I went on this tangent, because another thing that came up because it's related to Christmas movies, is the story of A Christmas Carol. And this is really funny because I never made this connection, but somebody said this might ruin the movie for you, but if you really stop and think about it, A Christmas Carol is all about the only way getting rich people to be generous is by scaring them to do it.
Yeah.
And I was just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that is so horrible because it's so true.
Uh,
And so it made me think of the correlation into this because one, it's a Christmas movie, and then also it's like talking about like the rich people and everything. So it was a long way to like circle back to that, but just like that whole theme in here of like the rich people and just like disconnected and not caring.
hmm.
Um,
Detached
just
from reality. Yeah.
oh yeah, no, it resonated, or it that message came through to me more this time than the first time I watched it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I didn't get so deep watching this. I was too busy laughing at some of the ridiculous lines in it.
Oh no, I know. Like that's the thing, is just like it was one of the. Do you remember in How I Met Your Mother when they had that episode of where they had those shattering moments of realization about themselves or somebody, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you never noticed like that person always like breathes with their mouth open or something," and then everybody just sits there, and then they have the glass shattering sound in the background,
Yeah.
and then you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Shattered reality. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially that's what happened with me with this, where it's just like I started seeing it everywhere because I saw it once. So
Oh gosh, that's funny. Now you probably ruined this movie for me.
probably ruined the movie for a bunch of people. They're gonna watch it and they wanted it to be funny, and then it's just gonna be depressing now.
Ruined it for maybe 20 people tops. Thanks. Oh man. So things, I guess, happen in this. We kind of talked about the movie as a whole, but um some of the bigger scenes, I guess, about how we're introduced to Eddie Murphy, and he's on the streets like begging, and he's on like a, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like just a board with wheels on it. It reminds me of those ones you used to get in gym class when you're a kid.
hmm
And like you just sit on them and you just roll around and you run into each other,
What were they
basically.
for? What were those for, even in gym
I
class?
have no idea.
Yeah, I've
Just
seen
for
those.
that, I think.
Yeah, I've seen those also used, like they have them a little bit bigger and you like put chairs on them in like halls. so you can stack chairs and then move them around.
Oh yeah, like casters.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have casters that you can roll heavy furniture and stuff around, almost like dollies, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, I get that. Um, he's rolled around like that, saying like he lost his legs in Vietnam, and these cops basically call him out, and they pick him up, and then he just sets his legs down. He's like, "I can walk! Oh my gosh!" And that stuff is just classic Eddie Murphy. Um, and that's kind of how the whole thing sets up because he runs into Dan Aykroyd, and then Dan Aykroyd says he's trying to steal the payroll that he's carrying, and that's when the Duke brothers decide to do their bet for $1. That's like, oh, we can bring in this guy and Eddie Murphy's character and put him in the role of Winthrop, and we'll take all of Winthrop's money to make him live in the ghetto and everything, and see if he resorts to crime. The
Hmm.
whole bet, like they're ruining two people's lives.
Well, they're ruining one person's life. Well, in the end,
Yeah,
it was going to ruin both of them. Yes,
yeah,
because they
yeah,
were just
yeah.
gonna, yeah, ditch Eddie
Essentially,
Murphy.
yeah. Eventually, Eddie Murphy's life was going to be ruined too,
Yeah,
but over $1 bet.
yeah.
I'd buy that for $1. um, and then I would say that I think one of the best parts of this movie is just Eddie Murphy. I mean, we've talked about it when we did Smokey and the Bandit, and how Burt Reynolds was just like the most charismatic man in the world at the
Mm.
time. And I feel like every era or decade has those actors. Where Burt Reynolds was like the 1970s most charismatic like movie presence. Like you had to see him. He was always just played a likable character, and he was just like effortlessly cool. And I
Yeah,
think like I was trying to think like who was that like that in the 80s, and I was like it might be Eddie Murphy. Just
yeah.
effortless and like entertaining, and like Beverly Hills Cop, especially in Beverly Hills Cop. This one you see like glimpses of it, and it's as the decade goes on, it just kind of like grew and grew. Coming to America is another one too, where he ends up playing like half the cast, and like Arsenio Hall plays like the other half, basically. Uh,
Yeah. No,
but
that's
yeah,
kind of an
just
interesting conversation about just actors and actresses in general by decade.
yeah.
I would say just a small comment, piggyback on that.
Mhm.
I don't know if you get that anymore.
I don't think so either. I was trying to think about that. I was like, who is the actor that like everything they do, it's like effortless for them, and they're just entertaining in any situation. And like I
And
was
there's
trying to think about that. I'm like, I don't know, like who's the closest to that? Maybe like Ryan Reynolds or The
maybe,
Rock.
but even then too, like you also have to look at it. I don't know so much about Burt Reynolds. I mean, I know he did some pretty big stuff, but Eddie Murphy went on a run there for a
Yeah,
while where you don't get that as much anymore. I want to say really kind of after around maybe the 2010s, it's really sporadic. Like you get somebody, an actor or actress who's on a run for like 2 or 3 years and they're the hottest name out there. And then either they step away from the business or they just aren't hitting home runs anymore and
yeah,
they take a back seat for a little while or just slowly fade away. Where, yeah, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I'd say the 2000s, um up until like 2010, you had those people who were having streaks of 5 years up to maybe like a decade where it was just like on a roll.
yeah, yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, I would say Eddie Murphy is probably the one for the '80s. I mean, he got like Stallone too, and then Arnold in like the late '80s, early '90s.
Mm,
But I don't know, Eddie Murphy just like I don't know how to explain it. Just like having the charismatic like it factor
yeah.
of that time um is one that really stands out to me. Man, I was trying to think of like 90s and 2000s. I know it's kind of sounds weird, but like Adam Sandler was almost on a run like that for a little bit.
Yeah.
With Happy Gilmore and then
Billy Madison,
Billy
Little
Madison.
Nicky, um,
Yeah, I mean, Little Nicky was kind of a bomb, but people still went and like saw it.
yeah,
A lot of people talked about it. Waterboy,
Waterboy, there we go.
The Wedding Singer, Big Daddy. Like he was on a roll there for a while. Where every single movie he did was like just instant money because he was in it. And then I guess you could say something with Jim Carrey too for a little bit, but
You want to know something dumb and kind of funny? And it, I picture this. Maybe nobody else is going to relate to this, but I feel like Adam Sandler is at the time, what, the 90s, was to comedy what Eminem was to rap. Like, just came in out of nowhere, boomed, was like the center of attention. And I don't like, they're not really all that similar personally, but I don't know why I feel like they're both kind of sort of similar personalities to a little certain extent of being just like laid back. I don't really want to be in front of everybody, but I'm like uber successful and wealthy.
yeah, more of just like kind of avoiding the spotlight, I guess.
Yeah.
If you want to like say it like that, like yeah, I get that. I'd be two completely different personalities.
Yeah. So, man, what the heck? We're talking about trading places and we're talking about Eminem and Adam Sandler.
Oh God. And now I'm just like envisioning Adam Sandler in 8 Mile.
Would you like a piece of pie?
And mom spaghetti. Oh man. Would you like a bowl of spaghetti? Oh geez. Well, moving on from that, back to Trading Places. I would say Dan Aykroyd is pretty solid in it. I mean, Dan Aykroyd, you talk about another guy who had kind of a run too. Like, he was always really good at being like the number two guy
I was just gonna say that.
or like a 1B, where
Hmm.
he's really good for someone to play off with.
Yeah, but he
Kind of,
he
kind of like David Spade, like how David Spade works so well with Chris Farley.
yeah.
And it was like those two guys had such great chemistry that they worked so well off each other. And then you watch different Chris Farley movies where he's with other people and it's just not quite the same.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's really good because and even how you said like 1B, because I think about Spies Like Us, with
Ghostbusters.
yeah, Dan Aykroyd, where it's just like, and I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've really seen with him that he is, well, The Great Outdoors, that he was the main guy.
Yeah.
Blues Brothers, he was a tandem in that one.
Yeah. And you think about it too, always seems to be the more grounded guy. Aside from the great outdoors, he's kind of the wacky guy in that, and John Candy's the more grounded guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned like Spies Like Us, then you got Ghostbusters, where that was more of an ensemble cast, but I mean, it had Bill Murray in it. It's really hard for anybody to kind of outshine Bill Murray, especially at that time. But yeah, definitely a good like 1B guy, a dual lead, I guess. And even movies where he was a little more serious in like My Girl, another movie with Jamie Lee Curtis. But um yeah, always kind of know what to expect with Dan Aykroyd. And really the only movie I've ever seen with him where I thought he was horrible in it was Caddyshack 2. And I feel like that was just because he was trying to play like an even dumber version of Bill Murray's character.
Yeah.
I think he was just really miscast in that.
Mm.
But and I kind of mentioned in this movie, Jamie Lee Curtis did a really good job with the comedy and kind of showed that like, she was more than just the scream queen.
Yeah.
So it was really good seeing that. And I also thought the guy who played the butler was pretty solid.
Yeah.
The guy who played Coleman.
Yeah, he's the um, he's the guy who also did Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I can't think of what his name was in the Indiana Jones.
I'm blanking on the name too. Yeah.
That's why I always remember him for though.
Oh, Harrison Ford's another one of those dudes too that was just kind of like effortless.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but that's also kind of an interesting career for him. But I think we've talked about that before, so just moving on. Um, things that were great. I had Eddie Murphy. I thought was great. Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis were good. Um, we've already talked about Jamie Lee Curtis's topless scenes, and they really come out of nowhere. So like Dan Aykroyd, uh, gets thrown out of prison. He's in prison, and they like bail him out, and because they're like, "Oh, he stole all this money and everything," and then the principal from the Breakfast Club is like some guy they're using for insider trading or something like that.
Yeah.
And he pays Jamie Lee Curtis, who's a prostitute in this, to like dirty talk to him while Dan Aykroyd's trying to talk to his fiance. So she leaves him. So it's like his life completely falls apart. Was the whole plan of the Duke brothers. But um, she ends up like feeling bad for him because she finds out like what happened with him. And originally, like she's like, okay, I'll help you out, and then you'll pay me back once you get your money and everything. And they're just like in her apartment talking, and all of a sudden she just like takes her shirt off.
Yeah.
And like comes out of nowhere. And I'm like, okay. And then later on, his life's getting worse and worse, and all of a sudden he's like super sick. And she's supposed to be going out like basically to work, as an escort. And she decides to like stay there and like take care of him because he's running a fever and he's sick. And he's like laying in her bed, and then like all of a sudden she just like takes her dress off, and she's standing in there in her underwear, and then climbs in bed with him.
Hmm.
It's really weird. Like, okay, I'm like, as a man, I'm not gonna complain about it, but at the same time, thinking logically, I'm like, this really makes no sense.
Yeah.
Um, so some of the funnier scenes, we always talk about scenes and lines and stuff. The one that really got me laughing this time is when Dan Aykroyd's like trying to make as much money as he possibly can. And he goes to a pawn shop, and he's like trying to pawn off this watch, and he's like explaining to the guy, he's like, this is a designer watch and it makes so many of them. And the guy's like, $50. And he's like, you don't understand. Like, you can tell time in London, in New York, in Vienna, in Australia, all at the same time. He's like, this would cost like thousands. And the guy's just like, in Philadelphia, it's worth $50. That was really cracking me up this time. Uh, and an, an Eddie Murphy scene that cracked me up is at the beginning when he gets put in jail, when they're trying to like say that he was stealing the payroll from Dan Aykroyd, and he's like trying to act like he's all hard and everything, and he's like, oh yeah, it's like he's talking about how he's a pimp and everything, and there's these two big black guys in the cell, and the one guy's like, um. He's like, I was here when they brought you in and you were crying like a pussy. And then the other guy's just like, yeah.
The whole time, every time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing that guy ever says is, yeah. That kept cracking me up too. Then they're getting ready to like beat him down. And then they find out that like, the Duke brothers bailed him out. So he gets out like just the nick of time. Uh, and I think another funny thing is just seeing like Dan Aykroyd's character's life fall apart and like how desperate he gets.
Yeah.
And how he shows up at the Christmas party like in his dirty Santa outfit, and he like grabs a gun and everything, and he's completely wasted, and he thinks this whole time that um Eddie Murphy has like framed him and he's like
Yeah.
just trying to take his life and his job and everything. And he doesn't. He's unaware of the whole bet and all that. It's funny, like he gets thrown out of the party and he's like walking around in the lobby area, and this is like when Eddie Murphy realizes what happened, like because he's in the bathroom and he overhears the Duke brothers talking about their bet.
Yeah.
So he goes and finds Dan Aykroyd, and he's like, Winthrop, hey Winthrop, and like Dan Aykroyd's just like, he's like so wasted. Like I don't know why that cracked me up so much. This he like explains what's going on, and then that's when they devise the plan, basically to um try to figure out what was going on with the principal from the Breakfast Club and how the Duke brothers are using him for like insider trading on frozen orange juice of all things. Uh, and that leads into the other thing that really made me laugh too, is they're all wearing disguises, and then
Yeah.
also leads into a thing too that didn't age well. But like Eddie
Yeah.
Murphy's supposed to be like this guy from Cameroon. And I mean, it's this classic Eddie Murphy playing some dumb character, which I mean, he would go on to do in countless movies, like The Nutty Professor, where he played like the entire cast. But uh, the what it really made me laugh is when Jamie Lee Curtis comes in and she's dressed up like a German girl. She looks like the St. Pauli girl.
But she's Swedish.
Yeah, it's, and like the Coleman, the butler's like Irish, and he's like does a really good Irish accent and everything. And when she walks in, he's like, "Oh, you must be from Germany. You must be German." And she's like, "I'm from Sweden." He's like, "But you're wearing lederhosen." No, definitely from Sweden. Like, every time she mentions it, it's so funny.
Which is weird too, because it didn't really have to be that way because there it was like New Year's Eve or whatever, and there
Yeah.
was some big party and people were all dressed up, so they didn't have to be from different places.
The only thing I can think of is that they had to try to hide their identities
Yeah.
because the the principal from the Breakfast Club like knew probably would know every single one of them. Remember, because he paid Jamie Lee Curtis to talk to Dan Aykroyd,
Mm-hmm.
so he probably would have recognized her. And then the odds of him, he would have known who Eddie Murphy was. And
Yeah.
then the butler, like the odds of him knowing him were pretty high. And then but the one he recognizes the most is Dan Aykroyd's character, who's wearing blackface and talking with a Jamaican accent.
Oh man.
And that didn't age very well.
No.
But I mean, unless they're doing Lethal Weapon 5, then it's tasteful blackface.
Or Tropic Thunder.
Yeah. Or he's just a dude dressed like a dude playing another dude.
Yep.
Oh gosh. Uh, they get the whole idea to basically, what are they gonna like steal? They figure out the information that this guy was gonna give for the frozen orange juice, and then they go and they basically like make the Duke brothers go and buy a whole bunch of stock, and then it crashes, and
Yeah.
they lose a bunch of money. Yeah, and then they can't afford to pay it off
Mm-hmm.
at the end and lose all their money.
Yep.
But they sold it at the perfect time, so they made tons. And then it's like they're happily ever after. And I forgot about the scene at the end where they're on the beach
Mm-hmm.
and like Coleman's got this really young girlfriend with him, and Eddie Murphy's like sunbathing with this girl that's with him, and then they see out on a yacht and it's Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis are together.
Of course.
Yeah. And they live happily ever after.
Because that's real life.
Yeah. Uh, did you have any scenes that stood out to you? I mean, I pretty much took all of them.
Well, yeah, you can. Yeah, that's fine. You took all of them. One thing that
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, that I really thought was funny during one of the scenes you mentioned when Dan Aykroyd was the dirty Santa, where he just
Yeah.
started shoving food in his suit.
Yeah.
And the funniest one was when he put the salmon
Yeah.
in there. First of all, gross, but second of all, I don't know, that one just cracked me up. But one thing that I do just kind of want to like put in here, and it's not like horrible or anything, but it just it makes me laugh a little bit. Um, of course, it's just they had to squeeze it into the movie, so I understand that in if they were making it look realistic, they probably would have spread it out more. But when they moved Eddie Murphy into Dan Aykroyd's place and he invited people over and he already started being paranoid about being like proper.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I can understand that that would eventually probably happen, but it wouldn't happen that fast.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. The party, and then he ends up kicking everybody out.
Hmm.
uh, yeah, those are some. That's a funny scene too. Um, anything else to add? You want me to get the trivia and facts?
Let's do trivia facts.
All right. So the actors that played Randolph and Mortimer Duke make a cameo appearance in Coming to America as the same characters. The two are now homeless, and Prince Akeem, who's played by Eddie Murphy, gives them a large amount of money to get them off the streets.
Oh, I did not know that. Well, I've
Yeah.
never seen that movie, so I
Oh,
guess
you've never seen Coming to America?
no. I
Oh my
haven't.
gosh, we're gonna have to put that on the list because that movie's hilarious.
Add it to the
Uh,
list.
yeah. So this is Ralph Bellamy's 99th movie and Don Amici's 49th. This was Eddie Murphy's second film, and he joked in classic Eddie Murphy fashion. He says, "Between the three of us, we've done over 150 movies." Uh, so in 2010, as part of the Wall Street Transparency and Accountability Act, which was to regulate financial markets, a rule was introduced which barred anyone from using secret information to corner markets, similar to what the Duke brothers did.
Oh
Um, since the movie inspired the rule, it has been since become known as the Eddie Murphy rule.
my gosh, that's funny.
For a period of time, the restaurant in the Westin Hotel in Philadelphia was named Winthrop and Valentine after two main characters in this movie, and it was later became the Lee Restaurant and Bar.
Hmm.
Every year since 1997, Italian channel Italia 1 broadcasts the movies. This movie, Christmas Eve, it is regularly gets more than 10% of the share. And then again on Christmas Eve of 2021, it was the most watched show on Prime TV with a 14.6 share. So Italians love this movie.
Interesting.
So Bellamy and Amiche cheerfully admitted that they were unfamiliar with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd's work. They also said that Murphy and Aykroyd's acknowledged that they were unfamiliar with their work as well. According to John Landis, Jamie Lee Curtis was a hard sell to Paramount because she had only done horror movies and wasn't known for comedy. But he admitted her willingness to perform topless helped change the executive minds at Paramount after they saw a photo of her in a bikini.
Oh my
They felt
gosh.
that that would help sell the movie.
What the heck?
Yeah.
Well, she wasn't the only
1980s.
one.
Yeah. So Penelope, her friend Muffy, is played by Kelly Curtis, who was the sister of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh.
Even though she was considered the scream queen in Hollywood at this point, after she starred in a slew of horror movies, which being Halloween, Halloween 2, The Fog, Terror Train, and Prom Night. Even though horror movies were infamous for exploiting the female stars, Jamie Lee Curtis says she did not feel exploited in Hollywood until she began starring in mainstream movies like this one. She says she never had been asked to appear naked in any horror movie she was in, but once she went mainstream, she had to take her top off, which that just sounds like something Jamie Lee Curtis would say. So at around 1 hour and 6 minutes, the R&B legend Bo Diddley, I would consider him a blues legend, not an R&B legend. That's a weird way to say that.
Hmm.
Appears as the pawnbroker who buys Louis' watch for $50.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At around 3 minutes, in the opening montage of Philadelphia, there's a shot of the Rocky statue
Yeah.
from Rocky 3 that was shot in front of Philadelphia Spectrum Arena. The statue now resides at the base of the museum steps, which is
Hmm.
that's where it was when I saw it years ago. The baggage handlers on the train were supposed to be Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, playing their characters of the Mackenzie brothers from SCTV. When that fell through, Dan Aykroyd or Eddie Murphy recommended um, Tom Davis and Al Franken from their SNL days, which that's pretty obvious because like you listen to those guys talk and they sound like Bob and Doug McKenzie. And the last thing I got is this movie cost $15 million and it made 90 in the box office.
Rock.
So grades. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, what do you think they are?
IMDb is 6.6.
It is a 7.5.
Oh, wow. A 7.5. Wow. You realize that's higher than the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Oh, I'm not surprised.
I'm a little surprised with the cult following. Um,
Uh,
okay.
so Rotten Tomatoes,
Rotten Tomatoes, 88%.
89. You're so close.
Ooh, dang. Audience, 91.
85.
Oh, took a dip. I think I may have gone first last time. Do you want to go?
Yeah. Like I said, this is I think my third time watching this movie. I think it's really funny. I think the cast is really great. Um, this movie, like as far as being a Christmas movie, I mean it's as much of a Christmas movie as Die Hard, where I would consider it a Christmas movie, but like I think even Die Hard references Christmas more than this does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you got Dan Aykroyd dressed as Santa. There's a couple times they say something about Christmas, and then as the movie goes on, they have that New Year's Eve party. So it's kind of more just like a holiday movie. But yeah, I don't know. It's probably the second biggest Philadelphia movie. I mean, I consider Rocky the biggest Philadelphia movie.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. It's a fun movie. I probably end up watching it every year now after I watched it last year. So I'm two for two now. So I might as well watch it next year. Uh, yeah, I end up giving it a 4.5 out of 5. I feel like it is a little bit long because it's about 2 hours. And I mean,
Yeah.
for this is kind of a goofy comedy at times. So I feel like some of that can be shaved down a little bit. But I mean, all in all, it's a great movie. So 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I mean, because you are right. This is kind of a weird one because I mean, I don't know if you're thinking of it more in a Christmas movie category or comedy. I'm thinking because it does qualify in that range of Christmas movie. It's not super centered around Christmas, but it is kind of a pivotal part of the movie. It's mostly a comedy though. But along with the things that you talked about, but also kind of being blunt and just saying like there were specific elements of this movie that did not age well, um, is keep those things in combination are keeping me from giving it a 5 out of 5. Like it's really good. It's really close. It's like kind of like right there.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it for me it just makes sense landing at 4.5 instead of the full 5.
Rock. So we're gonna stay with the idea of maybe unconventional holiday movies. And we talked about Bill Murray a fair amount in this, mentioning Ghostbusters and Caddyshack. We're going to be talking about Scrooge next time, which is another movie that I've only seen maybe once or twice. So it'll be fun to go back and check that one out. And also, I mean, it's a Christmas Carol, which you were talking about earlier with your, you know, realization of
Yeah.
the whole plot of that. Um, yeah, so it'll be interesting to talk about that. If you guys are liking the show, please subscribe and share. You can follow us on social media. We're on pretty much every platform. Not a whole heck of a lot going up on YouTube right now. Just I haven't had time. I'm so swamped with work. But there are episodes going up there, and we got some older episodes on there if you want to check that out that way instead of digging through Apple Podcasts. But yeah, come by next time. We're gonna be talking about Scrooged. And until then, as always, be kind and rewind.